A mother's instinct is to protect her child at all costs, but my cybersecurity training taught me to never ignore an anomaly. When those worlds collided, I realized the ultimate threat was not hiding in the dark web. He was sitting at my dining table, smiling and calling me Mom. I built a flawless trap to send my only flesh and blood to federal prison for 18 years. It destroyed my heart, but saved my life. Welcome, dear listeners, to James' Revenge Stories. Sadly, YouTube has completely demonetized our channel, leaving us without the necessary budget to keep our operations running. If you find today's story compelling, we politely ask for a humble contribution of just $1 to help pay our hardworking staff so they can sustain their livelihoods and continue bringing you these captivating tales. You can easily donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on your screen or by clicking the PayPal link located in the video description or the pinned comments section. My name is Ariana Warren. I am 44 years old, and for the better part of 2 decades, I have built an ironclad career as a senior data security director at Aegis Core Solutions. My daily life revolves around firewalls, encrypted enterprise networks, and hunting down zero-day vulnerabilities. I am literally paid by a massive technology conglomerate to be perpetually paranoid. But when I clocked out and went home, I left the armor at the door. I was just a mother. I had been a single mother since I was 20 years old, and my son Liam was the only project in my life where I never bothered to set up a defense mechanism. He was my ultimate achievement, my greatest source of pride in an otherwise exhausting world. At 24 years old, Liam was everything a mother could pray for. He was handsome, incredibly articulate, and seemingly driven by a profound moral compass. Recently, he had stepped into the role of founder and chief executive officer of his own health technology startup, a company called VitalCare. His mission statement brought tears to my eyes the first time I read it. VitalCare was designed to bridge the gap in the system connecting homeless military veterans with completely free, highly accessible healthcare services. Watching my son pitch his vision, seeing his eyes light up with genuine passion as he talked about giving back to those who had sacrificed everything, filled my chest with an overwhelming warmth. I believed in his mission with 100% of my heart. When traditional banks hesitated to fund a young, unproven entrepreneur, I did not think twice. I drained the entirety of my life savings, every single dollar I had sweated over and saved for retirement. Furthermore, I leveraged my impeccable personal credit and professional reputation to guarantee his massive startup loans. It was an astronomical financial risk, but this was my flesh and blood. He was so mature, so grounded, and so full of compassion. Why would I ever doubt the boy who used to bring home stray dogs and cry over injured birds? However, my profession trains me to notice when a pattern breaks. In the realm of data security, catastrophic breaches rarely announce themselves with blaring alarms. They always start as tiny, almost imperceptible anomalies. A slight lag in processing speed. An unusual unauthorized server request. In my personal life, the anomalies started small too, creeping in under the guise of ambition. It began when Liam started persistently borrowing proprietary host devices from Aegis Core Solutions. "It is just for cross-security checks, Mom," he would say, flashing that charming, effortless smile that always melted my resolve. "VitalCare handles highly sensitive medical records. I need to make sure our encryption architecture holds up against enterprise-level hardware. Who better to benchmark against than the absolute best in the business?" It sounded plausible. It sounded like the responsible action of a diligent tech founder. But an uncomfortable knot began to tighten in my stomach. Aegis Core equipment was strictly regulated, and my executive authorization was the only thing keeping those highly classified devices in his hands. I let it slide time and time again, forcibly burying my cold professional instinct under a thick layer of maternal affection. Then came the credit card statements. I had given Liam a supplementary corporate card for absolute dire emergencies, knowing that startup founders often face unexpected operational hurdles. One evening, while reviewing my monthly financial statements, my eyes locked onto a series of staggering, inexplicable charges. $5,000 at a luxury boutique hotel in Las Vegas. $2,000 at an exclusive underground VIP nightclub. A massive charge for premium imported champagne. When I gently confronted him over dinner, he did not miss a single beat. "Client entertainment, Mom," he said smoothly, placing a warm, reassuring hand over mine. Getting wealthy investors for a charity-driven startup is brutal. You have to play the game wine and dine the venture capitalists to get them to open their wallets. It is an investment, I promise you. I nodded, pretending to be convinced, but the suffocating weight of suspicion had permanently taken root in my chest. The glowing pride I felt for my son was slowly being poisoned by the calculating, analytical mind of a security director. The red flags were no longer fluttering in the distance. They were wrapping around my neck. The absolute breaking point arrived late one Tuesday night. The rain was violently lashing against the windows of my home office when my phone rang. It was Liam. His voice was frantic, breathless, carrying a sharp urgency I had never heard from him before. "Mom, I need a massive favor. Right now," he pleaded, his words tumbling over each other. "Our primary database is completely crashing. We have a massive server migration error. If I do not get it stabilized instantly, we lose all the veteran health records. I need your top-tier administrative access codes to Aegis Core. I just need to piggyback off your mainframe for 10 minutes to stabilize the load." The request hit me like a physical blow to the ribs. Top-tier access codes, the literal keys to the kingdom. If those codes were misused, it would compromise the entire global architecture of Aegis Core Solutions and end my life in federal prison. "Liam, I cannot do that," I said, my voice trembling but firm. "That is a severe violation of federal protocol. It is highly illegal." "Mom, please," he yelled, his tone violently shifting from desperate pleading to a sharp, aggressive manipulation. "These are veterans. People will literally die if they lose their medical history. Do you care more about your corporate rules than human lives? I am your son." He slammed the phone down when I refused again, leaving me sitting in a deafening silence. My hands were shaking uncontrollably. The terror gripping my heart was not from fear of my company, but from the sudden chilling realization that the person on the other end of the line did not sound like my beloved child. He sounded exactly like a hostile social engineer trying to bypass a human firewall. That night, I did not sleep a single second. I sat in the dark, staring at the blinking green lights of my router, feeling a cold dread wash over my entire existence. The mother in me desperately wanted to drive to his apartment, hold him, and fix his problems. But the security director in me knew I had a catastrophic internal breach on my hands. By morning, my agonizing decision was made. I could not investigate him using my own corporate tools without triggering internal alarms, and I could not confront him without undeniable facts. I needed a ghost. I picked up my phone and dialed the number of a highly classified private investigator named Marcus Vance. I was about to initiate a full background audit on my own son. Exactly at 2 o'clock in the morning, the prepaid burner phone I had purchased specifically for this investigation shattered the dead silence of my bedroom. I answered on the very first ring, my heart hammering violently against my ribs. Marcus Vance did not bother with polite introductions or gentle warnings. His voice was gravely stripped of any professional detachment, carrying an urgency that made my blood run completely cold. "Get dressed right now, Ariana," he ordered sharply. "Do not go to your office. Do not use your primary vehicle. Take an anonymous taxi and meet me at the abandoned subterranean parking structure far south of downtown Seattle. Come alone. We have a massive situation." The line went dead before I could even formulate a question. I threw a heavy trench coat over my clothes, ordered a ride, and stared blankly out the window as the freezing rain washed over the desolate city streets. The underground garage was a concrete tomb illuminated only by a few flickering fluorescent bulbs. The air smelled of damp earth, stale cigarette smoke, and motor oil. Marcus was leaning against a concrete pillar in the deepest corner of the lowest level, his silhouette barely visible in the heavy shadows. As I approached, he did not say a single comforting word. He simply reached into his heavy leather jacket and handed me a remarkably thick, heavily bound manila folder. It felt like a brick of solid lead in my trembling hands. "Turn on your phone flashlight and look at the corporate filings first," Marcus instructed, his tone completely devoid of sympathy. I flipped the heavy cover open. Vital Care was not a registered health provider. It was a dizzying labyrinth of shell companies nested within obscure offshore tax havens. "There are no medical clinics, Ariana," Marcus continued ruthlessly, his words cutting through the freezing air. "There are no outreach programs." My team physically checked all 4 addresses listed on his grant applications. 2 of them are abandoned industrial warehouses. One is a vacant dirt lot, and the last one is a heavily guarded private storage facility. He has not helped a single homeless veteran. The entire operation is a meticulously constructed phantom. My lungs forgot how to process oxygen. I turned to the next page, revealing pages of intercepted code dark web forum screenshots and complex network architecture diagrams. "If it is not a healthcare company, what exactly is he doing with all those servers?" I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of the revelation. "He is running a massive, highly illegal data harvesting syndicate," Marcus replied coldly. "Those back-end servers you saw him building. They are not encrypting patient data to protect it. They are weaponized to scrape it. He is targeting vulnerable municipal databases, siphoning highly classified personal medical histories, psychological profiles, and terminal illness diagnoses. He then packages that intimate data and it auctions it to the highest bidder on the dark web. His primary clients are black market insurance brokers and identity theft rings. Your son is not a savior. He is a data broker for the criminal underworld." The words slammed into my chest, but the horror was far from over. I frantically flipped to the financial section of the dossier. Bank statements, wire transfer receipts, and offshore routing numbers filled the pages in a blur of black ink. My life savings, the massive business loans I had personally guaranteed, the retirement funds I had bled for over 2 decades, none of it went into software development or charity. "Follow the money trail," Marcus said, pointing a gloved finger at a highlighted column of transactions. I saw hundreds of thousands of dollars funneled directly into elite invite-only underground gambling syndicates. I saw verified purchase invoices for a custom-ordered imported Italian supercar, completely paid off in cash, and registered under a fake corporate entity in Delaware to avoid suspicion. He was living the hedonistic life of a billionaire playboy, while looking me dead in the eye, holding my hand and playing the humble, struggling philanthropist. I slumped against the damp concrete pillar, my legs threatening to give out completely. "Why?" I gasped, tears of pure agony finally spilling over my cheeks. "Why does he need so much cash so incredibly fast?" Marcus took a deep breath, his expression hardening into pure, grim reality. "Because he is in deep, Ariana, deeper than you can possibly comprehend. He got arrogant and tried to shortchange a highly dangerous international cybercrime syndicate. He owes them over $1 million. They are not the kind of people who send polite collection letters or take you to court. They are actively hunting him down, and they are rapidly losing their patience. That is exactly why he was so desperate for your corporate access codes the other night. He is entirely out of money, and he desperately needs a high-value data asset to trade for his own life." The heavy manila folder slipped from my numb fingers, hitting the damp concrete floor with a heavy thud. Papers scattered into the muddy puddles, the damning evidence of a monster dissolving in the dirty water. The world around me violently collapsed into dust. Everything I believed in, every sacrifice I had made, was a horrific, calculated lie. The child I had raised, the boy I loved more than oxygen itself, was a cold-blooded, calculating predator. He had weaponized his own mother's unconditional love and used the desperate plight of society's most vulnerable heroes as a convenient bulletproof shield for his criminal empire. Standing in that freezing, desolate garage, the naive, loving mother inside me died a sudden and violent death. A profound, suffocating grief washed over my soul, but it was quickly swallowed by something else, something dark, sharp, and intensely rational. He was perfectly willing to destroy innocent lives and ruin my entire existence just to save himself. But he had forgotten one crucial detail. He had forgotten what I do for a living. I did not go home after leaving that desolate underground structure. Instead, I drove directly to the towering glass and steel headquarters of Aegis Core Solutions. It was barely 4 o'clock in the morning. The corridors were silent, illuminated only by the sterile glow of emergency exit signs. A tiny, pathetic fragment of my soul still clung to the desperate hope that Marcus Vance, despite his flawless reputation, had made a catastrophic mistake. I needed to see the undeniable proof with my own eyes. I needed the cold, hard data to tell me the truth. I locked myself inside my private office, bypassed the standard biometric scanners, and accessed the deepest administrative layer of the company mainframe. My fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard, running a silent, localized diagnostic on every single network interface Liam had interacted with over the past 6 months. I deployed a sophisticated packet sniffer hunting for any unauthorized internet protocol routing that matched the shadow servers Marcus had identified. For the first 2 hours, the system returned nothing but clean standard operational logs. I almost let out a sob of relief. But my training dictated that the most dangerous threats never leave footprints in the snow. They walk on the bare concrete. I shifted my focus from the active network traffic to the dormant, fragmented cache files buried deep within the server architecture. That was when I found it. It was a parasite. A microscopic, deeply encrypted executable file sleeping silently within the source code of our primary client database. It was a masterpiece of malicious software, a custom-built Trojan horse designed to bypass our multi-factor authentication by piggybacking on authorized hardware. The hardware I had authorized. I isolated the malware, dragged it into a secure, disconnected sandbox environment, and began to forcefully dissect its anatomy line by line. As the encrypted layers peeled away, the sheer scale of the intended devastation became horrifyingly clear. This code was not a simple smash-and-grab tool. It was a highly sophisticated exfiltration engine. Once triggered, it was programmed to quietly siphon millions of sensitive corporate records, trade secrets, and proprietary algorithms, funneling them straight into the dark web routing network Liam controlled. It was a digital heist that would bankrupt Aegis Core Solutions and destroy the livelihoods of thousands of innocent employees. But the stolen data was not the ultimate betrayal. The true horror lay buried at the very bottom of the malicious script, in a small, elegantly written subroutine that made my blood freeze in my veins. Every piece of malware leaves a trace, a digital fingerprint that cybersecurity analysts use to track the origin of the attack. Liam had meticulously coded this software to erase his own tracks entirely. In their place, he had engineered the program to auto-generate a fabricated trail of evidence. I watched in absolute paralyzed terror as I read the forged registry commands. The software was programmed to rewrite the server logs, falsely indicating that the massive data breach was initiated directly from my personal workstation. It was designed to mimic my unique keystroke cadence, utilize my exact employee identification credentials, and spoof my encrypted network signature. He was not just robbing my company. He was framing me for the largest corporate cybercrime in the history of the nation. If this program executed successfully, there would be no doubt in the eyes of the authorities. The Federal Bureau of Investigation would raid my home, drag me out in handcuffs, and I would spend the next 20 to 30 years rotting in a federal penitentiary. My own son, the boy I had sacrificed my entire youth to protect, had calculated the exact weight of my maternal love and decided it was the perfect sacrificial lamb to appease the violent international cartel he owed money to. He was going to let me die in a concrete cell so he could walk away rich and free. A violent wave of nausea hit me. I scrambled to the small wastebasket under my desk and dry-heaved, gasping for air as the room spun out of control. The psychological agony of a mother realizing her child is a monster is a pain that defies human language. It is a profound, world-shattering grief that burns your soul to absolute ash. I sat on the cold floor of my office for a long time, staring blankly at the wall, mourning the death of the son I thought I knew. But when I finally stood up, the agonizing tears had completely evaporated. The weeping, devastated mother remained dead on the floor. The woman who sat back down in the heavy leather executive chair was solely the senior data security director. My mind sharpened into a cold, lethal instrument of pure logic. He thought I was just a naive, loving target. He forgot that I am the apex predator of this digital ecosystem. I wrote the very security protocols he was trying to manipulate. I could have deleted his malware right then and there. I could have locked him out, confronted him, and screamed at him until my throat bled. But that would only make him run, and he would simply find another victim to destroy. "You want to play a game of shadows, Liam?" I whispered to the empty, glowing room. "Let us play." I was not going to confront him. I was going to give him exactly what he wanted. I reached for my encrypted keyboard and began to write the first lines of code for a trap so inescapable, so flawlessly deceptive that he would never see the bars closing until he was completely locked inside. I invited him for dinner on Saturday evening. I cooked his favorite meal, a slow-roasted rosemary chicken, precisely the way I had made it since he was 7 years old. Every motion in the kitchen was mechanical and calculated. Underneath the collar of my silk blouse, taped securely against my collarbone, was a military-grade acoustic transmitter. I was not just cooking dinner. I was wearing a wire in my own home, preparing to interrogate my own child. When the doorbell rang at exactly 7 o'clock, I took a deep breath, forcing my facial muscles to relax into the soft, welcoming expression of a proud mother. I opened the door. Liam stood there holding a bottle of expensive red wine, looking slightly disheveled but impossibly charming. "Hi, Mom," he said, pulling me into a tight embrace. The smell of his expensive cologne mixed with the crisp autumn air. I hugged him back, feeling the solid weight of him fighting the violent urge to scream. "Liam, sweetheart, come in," I said, my voice dripping with manufactured warmth. "You look exhausted. Have you been sleeping at all?" We sat at the dining table, the very table where he used to do his middle school algebra homework. The conversation flowed with agonizing normalcy for the first hour. We talked about the weather, the local startup ecosystem, and the fabricated military veterans he claimed to be helping. Every smile he gave me felt like a razor blade sliding against my skin. I watched him expertly navigate the conversation, laying the invisible groundwork for his trap. He was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Right as I served the dessert, his posture shifted. The confident, visionary chief executive officer vanished, instantly replaced by a vulnerable, overwhelmed young man carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He let out a heavy, perfectly timed sigh and rubbed his temples. "Is everything all right, honey?" I asked, leaning forward, playing the exact role he expected, the concerned, unconditionally loving mother. "It is just vital care, Mom," he murmured, his eyes locked onto his plate. "We hit a massive regulatory roadblock. The Federal Health Commission needs to verify our data encryption standards before they approve our operational license. If we do not pass the audit by Monday morning, the bank will freeze our operating capital. The veterans will lose everything." He looked up at me, his eyes wide and shimmering with unshed fabricated tears. "I need a massive favor, Mom. I know I asked before and I know you said no, but I am entirely out of options. I need to borrow the security clearance keys for the Aegis Core VIP client files. Just for 24 hours. I need to run a parallel simulation to prove to the auditors that our framework can handle enterprise-level security." The sheer audacity of his lie was breathtaking. He was asking for the exact keys that would unlock the very doors his malware was quietly waiting behind. I let my hands tremble slightly. I looked away, biting my lip, channeling every ounce of maternal anxiety I could muster. "Liam, what you are asking is impossible. Those VIP files contain the most highly classified corporate data on the planet. If the internal audit team catches an external protocol ping, they will instantly trace it back to my executive credentials. I could face federal prosecution." He reached across the table, wrapping his warm, familiar hands over mine. "I know, Mom. I know it is a huge ask, but I swear on my life it is a closed-loop simulation. No data will be extracted, 0% chance of exposure. I am building a temporary bridge, testing the load and burning the bridge immediately. Aegis Core will not even register a blip on their radar." I let the silence stretch, forcing him to sweat, making him work for the prize. "Are you absolutely certain, Liam? You know how ruthless my industry is. If this goes wrong, they will not just fire me. They will destroy me. I will never let anything happen to you," he whispered, looking directly into my eyes with a chilling sociopathic sincerity. "I promise, Mom, I will protect you. You are completely insulated from this. I would never put you in the line of fire. I squeezed his hands back, my heart turning into a solid block of ice. I had it. I had the explicit verbal confirmation of his intent, the false reassurances, the premeditated manipulation, all perfectly captured in high-definition audio on the wire taped to my chest. Okay, I breathed out, letting a tear slip down my cheek. Okay, Liam, I will get you the access bridge, but you must promise me 24 hours only. 24 hours, he confirmed, a flash of pure, predatory triumph illuminating his eyes for a fraction of a second before he masked it with a grateful, loving smile. When he finally left kissing my cheek and thanking me profusely, I stood by the window and watched his tail lights fade into the darkness. The second his car turned the corner, the fragile, frightened mother evaporated. I walked into the kitchen, ripped the acoustic transmitter from my collarbone, and connected it to my encrypted laptop. I had the confession. Now I needed the firing squad. I picked up my secure phone and dialed a number I had not called in 4 years. It rang twice before a sharp, authoritative voice answered. "Sarah Collins," the voice said. "Sarah, it is Ariana Warren," I replied, my tone strictly professional. Special Agent Sarah Collins was a senior operative in the Cyber Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We had collaborated on several high-profile corporate espionage cases in the past. She knew my reputation, and I knew her ruthlessness. "Ariana, it has been a long time. What is going on?" "I have an active, highly sophisticated internal breach at Aegis Core Solutions," I stated flatly. "The perpetrator is targeting the VIP client database. I have a full audio confession, an identified malware payload, and the exact timestamp for the extraction attempt." "Who is the target?" Sarah asked, her voice dropping into operational mode. "The target is my son," I said. The words tasted like ash, but I did not hesitate. "And I need the Bureau to help me build a honey trap." Sarah was silent for exactly 3 seconds. She did not offer pity, and she did not question my judgment. "I am assembling a tactical cyber response team right now. I will meet you at your office in 2 hours." For the rest of the weekend, Sarah and I locked ourselves in a secure subterranean server room beneath the Aegis Core tower. We did not build a firewall to keep Liam out. We built a labyrinth to lock him in. We engineered a massive phantom server, a perfect honey trap. To Liam's malware, it would look exactly like the authentic VIP database, complete with fabricated client files, artificial employee traffic, and dummy financial records. But it was a digital ghost town. Every single file he attempted to download was embedded with a microscopic tracking beacon that would immediately broadcast his physical location to federal satellites. We rigged the phantom server so that the moment his unauthorized download reached 100%, it would automatically lock down his hardware, sever his connection to the dark web, and trigger a silent alarm directly to the federal field office. He thought he had manipulated a helpless mother into handing over the keys to the kingdom. He had no idea that I was leading him by the hand straight into a reinforced steel cage. For 48 consecutive hours, I did not leave the subterranean server level of the Aegis Core Solutions headquarters. I survived on black coffee adrenaline and a cold, unyielding rage. Constructing a believable digital decoy is an art form. If the data packets felt too light, or if the server response time was too fast, Liam's sophisticated malware would instantly detect the anomaly and abort the sequence. Therefore, Agent Collins and I painstakingly populated the isolated intranet environment with terabytes of synthetic corporate intelligence. We generated millions of dummy client profiles, fabricated complex financial ledgers, and seeded the network with mathematically valid but entirely useless encryption keys. It was a flawless replica of our primary system, completely air-gapped and mathematically severed from the actual Aegis Core mainframe. While I handled the digital architecture, the Federal Bureau of Investigation secured the physical environment. On Wednesday morning, a specialized technical surveillance countermeasures team bypassed standard building security under the guise of an emergency ventilation repair crew. They meticulously dismantled my private executive office on the 42nd floor. They installed microscopic high-definition optical tracking devices behind the acoustic ceiling tiles and embedded pinhole cameras directly into the smoke detectors. Every single square inch of my office was now a federally monitored recording studio. The objective was not just to stop the cyber attack, but to capture indisputable high-resolution footage of his physical actions. We needed to record his face illuminated by the monitors, his hands on my keyboard, and his active execution of the malicious payload. By Thursday afternoon, the trap was fully armed. I procured a sterile, heavy-duty external hard drive and loaded the fabricated security clearance keys onto it. I packaged it into a tamper-proof envelope and hired a secure courier to deliver it directly to his apartment. Inside the package, I included a brief set of strict, handwritten instructions. I informed him that I had programmed a highly covert security loophole in the Aegis Core firewall that would remain open for exactly 30 minutes on Friday night, beginning precisely at 7 o'clock. By restricting his access to a 30-minute window, I was deliberately weaponizing his own anxiety. When a hacker is operating against a ticking clock, they do not have the luxury to run thorough diagnostic checks or probe for anomalies. Panic breeds carelessness, and I needed him to rush blindly into the snare. To guarantee his complete compliance and eliminate any lingering paranoia, I executed my final psychological maneuver on Friday morning. I sent him a text message designed to sound like a terrified protective mother attempting to cover her own tracks. "I am leaving the city for the weekend," I typed, forcing my fingers to remain steady. "I am driving up to the remote cabin in the mountains to establish a solid alibi. There is zero cellular reception up there. I will power my phone down completely at 5 o'clock today and will not turn it back on for 48 hours. The system back door will open tonight just as we discussed. Please get in, get what you need for the auditors, and get out safely. I love you, Liam." His reply arrived less than 1 minute later. "I love you too, Mom. You are saving my life. I will be a ghost." He truly believed he had won. He believed I was miles away, isolated in the wilderness, sitting in the dark, and praying for his success. He was half right. I was indeed sitting in the dark, but I was not in the mountains. At 6 o'clock on Friday evening, the Aegis Core Tower officially closed for the weekend. The massive building emptied out, leaving only the essential security patrols. I was sitting 3 floors directly below my own office, locked inside an unfinished windowless utility level that Agent Collins had transformed into a tactical command center. The room was suffocatingly hot, filled with the heavy hum of portable server racks and the tense silence of a dozen heavily armed federal cyber-tactical agents. The only light came from a massive bank of glowing surveillance monitors mounted against the concrete wall. Agent Collins stood shoulder to shoulder with me, her arms crossed over her tactical vest, her eyes locked onto the network radar screen. Neither of us spoke a single word. The digital clock on the master console flipped to 6:45, then 6:50. The silence in the room was so absolute that I could hear my own pulse hammering violently in my ears. At exactly 6:56, a sharp electronic chime echoed through the command center. A single glowing green node appeared on the lower perimeter of the digital map. He had entered the building. He had used the cloned executive security badge I had allowed him to copy months ago, casually bypassing the automated lobby turnstiles. On the secondary monitors, the live camera feeds from the elevators activated one by one, tracking a tall figure wearing a dark hooded jacket and carrying a heavy tactical backpack. "Target is in the primary elevator bank," a federal agent whispered into his headset, his fingers hovering over a master kill switch. "Ascending to the 42nd floor." I watched the screen as the elevator doors slid open on my floor. The high-definition optical trackers in the hallway locked onto his face. It was my son. He walked with an arrogant, confident stride, completely unaware of the invisible crosshairs resting squarely on his chest. He reached my office door, scanned the stolen keycard, and stepped inside the honey trap. "Physical breach confirmed," Agent Collins stated coldly. "Wait for the digital handshake. Do not move until he initiates the download." I stared at the primary network monitor, holding my breath as the trap closed its jaws. On the glowing high-definition surveillance monitors, I watched my son sit down in my heavy leather executive chair. He casually unzipped his dark tactical backpack and pulled out a sleek, unauthorized solid-state drive, plugging it directly into the primary terminal. He did not hesitate. His fingers flew across my keyboard with the practiced, arrogant speed of a predator who believed he was completely invisible. He initiated the administrative override punched in the fabricated clearance codes I had given him and deployed his malicious payload. A digital progress bar appeared on the large secondary screen in the center of the room. The system was meticulously logging every single keystroke, every command prompt, and every line of weaponized code he injected into the network. 10%. He leaned back in my chair, a smug, satisfied smile spreading across his face. 50%. He pulled out his phone, likely preparing a secure encrypted message to his cartel handlers, letting them know the package was secured. 99%. I held my breath, the air in the tactical command room growing thick and suffocating. 100%. The moment the download completed, the entire atmosphere of my office violently shifted. The progress bar vanished. The ambient lighting in the room abruptly shifted from a soft white to a blaring hostile crimson. The terminal output completely cleared, and a single line of massive bold text materialized across all three of his monitors. It was a message I had personally hard-coded into the decoy server. "Checkmate, Liam." He froze. His smug smile instantly evaporated, replaced by a mask of pure, unadulterated terror. He frantically mashed the escape key, trying to violently yank the solid-state drive from the terminal. But the magnetic port lock had already engaged. He was physically tethered to his crime. I did not wait for him to process his failure. Agent Collins and I stepped out from the adjacent private server closet, flanked by 4 heavily armored federal tactical agents with their weapons drawn and aimed directly at his chest. "Step away from the console and put your hands in the air," Agent Collins commanded, her voice slicing through the room like a steel blade. Liam jumped back, knocking my heavy chair to the floor. His eyes darted frantically around the room before locking directly onto me. The panic in his eyes immediately morphed into a desperate, sickeningly calculated performance of innocence. "Mom, what is going on?" he shouted, holding his hands up, his voice trembling with manufactured fear. "Tell them to put their guns down." "I am just running the security simulation for Vital Care, exactly like we discussed at dinner. I am just doing the audit." "The simulation is over, Liam," I said, my voice completely devoid of any maternal warmth. It was cold, flat, and hollow. I pulled a small digital audio remote from my coat pocket and pressed the playback button. The audio from our Saturday dinner echoed loudly across the sterile office. His own voice filled the room, making empty promises. "I swear on my life it is a closed-loop simulation. I will protect you. You are completely insulated from this. I would never put you in the line of fire." "You are not running a simulation," I stated, stepping closer, looking at the stranger wearing my son's face. "You were going to frame me for the largest corporate data theft in history. You were going to let the authorities drag me out of my home in handcuffs. You were going to let me die in a federal penitentiary just so you could pay off a $1 million gambling debt to an international cyber cartel." The color completely drained from his face. The realization that I knew absolutely everything hit him like a freight train. The confident tech executive vanished, leaving only a terrified, cornered criminal. "Mom, please," he sobbed, dropping to his knees, genuine tears finally streaming down his face. "They were going to kill me. I had no choice. I am your son. You cannot do this to your own flesh and blood. Please, I am begging you, let me go. You stopped being my son the moment you decided to sell the terminal illness diagnoses and psychiatric profiles of thousands of innocent people to the highest bidder on the dark web," I replied, turning my back to him. "Take him," Agent Collins ordered. The heavy metallic click of the handcuffs snapping around his wrists echoed off the glass walls. He screamed my name, thrashing and begging, as the federal agents physically dragged him out of the office and into the elevator. I did not turn around. I simply stared at the blank wall until his screams completely faded away. The honey trap I had designed was an absolute triumph. Not only did we capture Liam in the act, but as his malware attempted to phone home with the fabricated data, it acted as a highly precise homing beacon. The Federal Bureau of Investigation traced the encrypted digital handshake straight back to the overseas servers of the international syndicate. Within 48 hours, international authorities launched a massive coordinated raid dismantling the entire black market operation and arresting the cartel leadership. The criminal trial was incredibly swift. Confronted with irrefutable digital forensics, high-definition optical surveillance footage, and his own crystal-clear audio confession, Liam's defense strategy completely collapsed. The judge showed zero leniency. Liam was sentenced to 18 years in a maximum security federal prison with absolutely no possibility of early parole. His official charges included grand larceny, massive systemic wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit severe corporate sabotage. Months later, on a quiet Friday evening, I stood entirely alone in my restored office, looking out through the floor-to-ceiling glass at the sprawling Seattle skyline. The city looked beautiful, vibrant, and completely oblivious to the war that had been fought in the shadows. I had lost everything a mother traditionally values. My life savings were entirely gone, incinerated in underground casinos and impossible to recover. The child I had dedicated my entire youth to raising, the boy I loved more than life itself, was locked inside a concrete cell for the next 2 decades. My heart was permanently shattered into a million unfixable pieces. Yet as I watched the city lights flicker to life against the twilight, I felt a profound, heavy peace settle into my bones. I had shielded thousands of vulnerable, innocent lives from devastating medical extortion. I had protected the hard-earned livelihoods of my colleagues and the global reputation of Aegis Core Solutions. Most importantly, standing in the face of the ultimate betrayal, I had preserved the one asset no hacker, no cartel, and no manipulative family member could ever compromise: my absolute integrity. Thank you so much, dear listeners, for tuning in to the conclusion of today's story. We would love to know where in the world you are listening from, so please take a moment to let us know in the comments section below. If you found today's episode compelling and valuable, we humbly ask you to help us out with a contribution of just $1. You can easily do this by scanning the PayPal QR code currently displayed on your screen, or by clicking the direct PayPal link located in the video description and the pinned comment. Your generous $1 support directly pays the salaries of our dedicated staff, helping them feed their families and empowering us to continue creating high-quality stories to serve you. Thank you for your immense kindness, your generosity, and your valuable time.